The federal judge tossed out the cases both against the former FBI Director James Comey and the New York Attorney General Letitia James, cases that the president himself directly and publicly demanded. The judge also tossed out the appointment of Trump's handpicked U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, ruling that Attorney General Pam Bondi's attempt to install Ms. Halligan as interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia was invalid, adding that, quote, all actions flowing from Ms. Halligan's defective appointment constitute unlawful exercises of executive power and must be set aside. Now, Halligan, of course, was the only prosecutor who signed those indictments of James Comey and Letitia James, and what we now know was a fatal flaw in both of those cases.
This case mattered to me personally, obviously, but it matters most because a message has to be sent that the President of the United States cannot use the Department of Justice to target his political enemies. I don't care what your politics are, you have to see that as fundamentally un-American and a threat to the rule of law that keeps all of us free. I know that Donald Trump will probably come after me again, and my attitude is going to be the same. I'm innocent, I am not afraid, and I believe in an independent federal judiciary.
Comey does seem to have already been proven right on that front about the president continuing to come after him.
What was President Trump's reaction to those indictments against Comey and James being thrown out?
His reaction was, we've seen this before. We've seen partisan judges take unprecedented steps to try to intervene in accountability before, but we're not going to give up. And I know that the Department of Justice intends to appeal these rulings very soon if they haven't already.
We have made Lindsay Halligan a special U.S. attorney, so she is in court. She can fight in court just like she was, and we believe we will be successful on appeal. And I'll tell you, Lindsay Halligan, I talked to all of our U.S. attorneys, the majority of them around the country, and Lindsay Halligan is an excellent U.S. attorney, and shame on them for not wanting her in office.
My lead source is here to break it all down with us, CNN senior legal analyst Elie Honig. And Elie, obviously you heard Pam Bondi saying the Justice Department will be appealing this. Given what the judge said, though, I mean, what would that route look like? What are their options here?
So they do have the right to appeal up to the Fourth Circuit. But I don't like their odds, because if you look at this ruling, I will tell you as a Justice Department alum, Caitlin, it's painful. The way this broke, I was 10 minutes into teaching a class of college students, in a class about DOJ and the need to be independent of politics. And so we stopped, we did breaking news, is what happens if you take my class, put it up on the screen and started sort of reading the highlights. And at some point I just turned to them and said, guys, if you become prosecutors, don't ever do any of this, because what this decision does is it calls out the two fundamental flaws with both of these prosecutions, the Comey and the Letitia James prosecutions. One, malice. The only reason Lindsay Halligan was there as the prosecutor in the first place is because the real prosecutors refused to charge it and got pushed out. And then second, on top of that, just incompetence, the inability to return a grand jury indictment and to follow the basic rules. So it's a dark day for the Justice Department. Sure, they can appeal, but I don't love their chances.
So you're saying if this was you, it would be pretty embarrassing, basically.
My God. I mean, thankfully, I never had a case dismissed. Not that believe me, I was far from perfect as a prosecutor, but to lose not just one, but two, your two biggest cases, again, on such a basic defect that you couldn't follow the basic law of just installing somebody who was technically qualified. And when I say qualified, I don't mean resume, I don't mean how good a lawyer, I just mean met the basic requirements of law. That's humiliating.
Yeah, I mean, Jane Rossi has been saying this basically every night when we've had him on, that this is going to be illegal, that she was not going to be able to stay in that role. But I think the question is, I've been talking to people at the White House and around the president, maybe they'll refile Tish James. Do you think the Comey case is dead, though? Because to remind everyone, it was running up against the statute of limitations when they actually came and filed it. That's why there was so much pressure on Lindsay Halligan to do it, her second week on the job, first week on the job?
Right. So 4 days in on Comey. Yeah. So two problems with sort of, they can try to re-indict these cases. They can find a real prosecutor to go in and do it. But a couple problems. One, I'm not so sure a grand jury would approve these indictments. Let's remember, the Comey indictment just squeaked by. Remember, they went in there with 3 counts. The grand jury actually rejected 1 count and only barely approved the other 2. That tells you that there's a weakness in that case. That's number one. Number two, as you know, there could be a statute of limitations problem because you have 5 years to indict a case like that, right? Comey gave his allegedly false testimony September 30th, 2020. They indicted him September 25th, 2025, 5 days before, but now we're after. So there could be a problem with that as well.
But can we just talk about what it's like inside that office? So if you're working in that office, I mean, Caitlin Pullins was reporting earlier, it's basically chaos because people were saying, you know, can I still file the other cases that we're working on and have Lindsay Halligan's name on it? I mean, if you were working in that office, how would you be looking at what came down today?
I would be worried that every indictment I had obtained from September 22nd, when Lindsay Halligan took office, until today, 2 months later, might be invalidated. That would be concern number one. Concern number two would be, now what do we do? Whose name? I mean, the U.S. attorney's name is at the bottom of every indictment. It's at the bottom of every major filing that you put in. Who's going to sign tomorrow for me would be the question on my mind. So not at all surprised to hear that reporting from Pullins. It's got to be just surreal and bizarre and chaotic in there.
And those that could be invalidated, just to be clear, it's not just people that Trump's gone after that he wanted indicted. This could be anyone else that they've indicted for totally legitimate reasons.
Drug cases, gun cases, violence cases, extortion. The difference, though, is at least in those other cases, you had Lindsay Halligan's signature and then a real prosecutor. So there's a fallback. Comey and James, you only had Lindsay Halligan. The judge said, when you take out the one person who signed, you're out of luck.
Yeah. Elie Honig, as always, great to have you and your analysis here. I also have veteran political commentator, speechwriter, and staff writer at The Atlantic, whose pieces are always must read, for me at least, David Frum here. And David, you know, I was talking about this retribution campaign. The president made very clear what he wanted to happen. I mean, he named a lot of these people specifically in that Truth Social post that was actually meant to be a private message. I wonder what you make of today's ruling and how you think the president is reading something like that.
I think the president and his team are in kind of disarray. I'm struck by the threats against Senator Kelly, where Secretary Hegseth has issued these tweets in which he said the Department of War is going to prosecute Senator Kelly. And then you had a clip at the top of your show from the White House press secretary, Carolyn Levitt, saying the Secretary of War, the Department of War would never issue an illegal order. Well, calling it the Department of War is an illegal order. Congress arranged the Department of Defense in 1947. It passed a law in 1949 titling the Department of Defense the Department of Defense. It did so because a few years before that, the United States had hanged a bunch of Japanese generals for the crime of waging offensive war and wanted to make clear that the United States would fight only in self-defense, according to the rules of international law that the United States had imposed on Japan and Nazi Germany. Every time that, in violation of act of Congress, the secretary makes up these titles for himself, Secretary of Partying, Secretary of War, whatever he calls himself, those are illegal orders too. And so they're not the most morally offensive illegal orders, but they are illegal. And every time he gives himself his title, he's proving he is willing to issue illegal orders because the department was organized and named by act of Congress. The president unilaterally cannot change that.
Well, and this is something that Hegseth was questioned about, I believe, by Alyssa Slotkin during his confirmation hearing. But on just the front overall, I think some people may not like the video. I mean, we've asked every Democrat that we've had on who was in the video why they felt the need to make that video, given, as you know, that is already what troops are trained to do, not to follow illegal orders. But I mean, I wonder what you make of the outsized reaction from the White House, where, I mean, for the first time, people around Trump have actually struggled to try to defend what he said.
In his first term, President Trump mused aloud about asking the military in the streets of the United States on U.S. soil to use lethal or near lethal force against protesters. Right now, the United States is conducting, without any kind of authorization by Congress, without any regional allies, a campaign of blowing up boats on the Caribbean Sea, international waters. Some 24 boats have been destroyed that we know of. Nearly 100 people have been killed. Maybe they're bad actors, maybe not. But drug dealers, the sentence, the punishment for people who carry drugs is not summary execution without trial. So the orders to those boats are at least plausibly illegal. So the administration is conscious that it is doing things that may be in violation of law. It's dismissed much of the officer corps of the military's many of the legal officers in the military's officer corps. It is denuding itself of the ability even to assess what is legal and what is not. So yeah, it's a pain point because they know they're up to no good.